Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we got to talk. So, the WNBA has recently started talking more and more about wanting to be paid more, the WNBA players. Speaking about, equity in pay, they look at what the NBA players are making and they're saying, why are we not making anywhere near that? There is a huge discrepancy in it. But we got to get down to the truth of the matter with this whole situation, okay? So, recently, at the All Star game. It was the All Star game. The WNBA players were wearing T-shirts that said "Pay us what you owe us." And if you ask me, if I was like an advisor on their board, I would have said, "Take those shirts off. Do not wear those shirts. Come up with a different verbiage other than pay us what you owe us." Why do I say that? Well, it's because when you look at the WNBA's profitability, if you just simply ask Google, was the WNBA profitable last year? That's what I typed in here. The response is no, the WNBA was not profitable last year. It actually incurred a $40 million loss last year. So if I own a company and it lost $40 million, what do I owe myself? What should I pay myself out of that? What do I owe myself? If you're running a company for me and you lost $40 million, I'm not going to pay you very much, if anything. You lost money, right? So whenever they're saying pay us what you owe us, what exactly do we owe you in a company that's losing $40 million? That's the first thing. So if you, I mean, if you want to know like all the frustration, where it all came from, it mainly came from looking at their male counterparts in the NBA. That's mainly where this frustration comes from because if you look at the gender pay gap, it is enormous. It's crazy. So you look at Caitlin Clark and Victor Wembanyama. So if you look at they're both number one draft picks the same year. Caitlin Clark made $76,500 that year from the WNBA. That was her salary. And you look at Victor Wembanyama, it was $12.1 million. Huge discrepancy. But then again, when you just look at the stadium and you look at how many people are actually coming to watch these people play, it's night and day. It's crazy, right? So for one, the WNBA, they have a shorter season. So they don't play as many games as the NBA. The NBA, they play 82 games. So when you play 82 games and you've got almost 18,000 people coming to the stadium to pay ticket prices that are much higher than the WNBA ticket prices, you can imagine how much money the NBA accrues on an annual basis compared to what the WNBA is accruing. So again, let's just compare a quick example. If I own a business and it makes $100 million, I'm going to pay my employees quite a bit more than a company that lost $20 million. It's just common sense, right? So I think I don't know. It almost feels like they know something that I don't know because it seems like simple arithmetic. It seems like their math is just not mathing. They're asking to be paid more, but their business that they're working under is losing a substantial amount of money every single year. Part of what I'm thinking that they're banking on, and part of why I think that they are frustrated that they're not getting paid as much as they would like, is because they look at the valuation of these teams. Like if you just look at the valuation of the entire WNBA, it's about $3.5 billion. The Golden State Valkyries is the most valuable franchise at $500 million. But I believe the reason why these organizations are valued, or the entire organization, the entire WNBA, the reason why I believe it's valued where it's at is because it's associated with an organization, the NBA, that's doing so substantially well. If you put the WNBA on its own and it wasn't actually, I think, 60% owned by the NBA. So if the NBA had nothing to do with the WNBA, the WNBA would have folded 10 years ago, easily. Unless you have somebody like Magic Johnson that comes in and with a group and they buy the whole basketball league. Maybe it lasts 2 or 3 more years, but it's not reasonable. It's not feasible to think that the WNBA would even survive 3 to 5 years without the ownership of the NBA backing everything. Um, it's just common sense, right? It's just common math, common numbers. You cannot increase everybody's pay if the business lost $20 million. And you look at the like how many people are actually coming to the games this year, or I guess it was last year, they ended up having an increase. 48% increase is what the WNBA had, and they had 9,800 people coming to watch the games. That was an average of 9,800 people, and that was after a 48% increase. Even after that 48% increase, they still lost $20 million. So while these players are frustrated with their pay, I think a better mentality would be, how do we figure out a way for this league to stand on its own feet? Like, that's the first thing that they've got to figure out. How do we, instead of losing $20 million, how do we profit $1 million? That's the first step. It's like, instead of saying, pay me more, I think they need to be doing more focus on trying to get better branding and marketing and all that stuff to try to get this company, this organization, from losing $20 million a year to at least breaking even. They got to at least get to that point. So instead of pay me, pay me, pay me, it needs to be more meetings and more discussions about, I remember them doing like a promo, like a promo kit, I guess I would call it, about 2 or 3 years ago. They were saying, like, watch us. They kept saying, we're aggressive, we do this, we do that, watch us. They need to do more of that, trying to get more eyeballs on the TV instead of being frustrated about their pay. I've got 3 daughters, and I tell them, like, it's unfortunate because sometimes you just don't get a fair shake in life in certain things. And it's unfortunate that for whatever reason, this world that we live in, they do not support women's sports, women in lead of a movie. They just, I don't know why. I don't know what that's about, but that's just a fact. I was telling my daughter, and I know this sounds bleak, sounds a little crazy probably coming from a male talking to his daughter, but she was talking about, she's really into Marvel movies. And she was talking about the Black Widow movie. And she was asking, like, how well did that do in the box office? And I was like, it didn't do well at all. And she was like, well, why? And I said, because it had a woman lead in it. And she could not process that. So the movie Thunderbolts was coming out. That's also a Marvel movie, and it had a woman lead in that role. And she was like, well, do you think Thunderbolts is going to do well? And I said, no, it's not going to do well. She was like, really? You don't think it's going to do well? And I said, baby, I'm sorry to tell you, but if the movie has a woman lead in it, it's not going to perform well. I don't know why. Maybe it's just a bunch of weird, pig-headed men, and I don't know what it is. But if you put a woman in a lead role in a movie, it's not going to perform as well as if you put a guy in the lead role. Just look at the John Wick movies. Go look at the numbers on those. Go look at Marvel movies and compare what Captain Marvel does compared to Captain America. Just go look at them. It spells itself out. And that example is a perfect example of what's going on with the WNBA. People are not watching it mainly because there's women in lead roles in this situation. Do I agree with that? I think it's horrible. But it's the facts. And if people aren't coming to watch your movie, then Brie Larson can't be paid like, I don't know, like Captain America gets paid in his movie. Because this one makes more money. So the lead role is going to get paid more than Brie Larson should get paid in hers because she's not going to accumulate as much money. The same thing over here. LeBron James, when he goes and plays for the Lakers, he's going to put so many more seats, so many more butts in those seats at a much higher rate. Like, instead of the tickets being $100, his tickets will be $1,200. And he's got 18,000 people instead of over here where Brittany Griner has 9,000 people and those tickets are selling for $150 each. So how can Brittany Griner expect to be paid anywhere near what LeBron James is making? It's the same situations. So people have this argument, whether it's in pro sports, whether it's women boxing compared to Floyd Mayweather, or it's movies, and you compare Robert Downey Jr., you compare him to Scarlett Johansson, or it's Steph Curry compared to, I don't know, anybody, Caitlin Clark even, and she's the highest paid one. So if you look at all of these comparisons, that's the basis of it. That's the truth of the matter. It's over here, they're making more so they can get paid more. They're making way up here compared to what they're making over here. And these people are expecting to be paid the same. It's just not realistic. So that's all that I got for you today. I guess I'll say one more thing. I think the only hope that the WNBA really has in this whole situation is if the NBA does some type of profit sharing situation. It's their only hope. So the NBA, they have what, 30 teams or 32 teams? I always get the NBA and the NFL mixed up on how many teams they have. But let's say the NBA, they have 32 teams. Okay. If the NBA has 32 teams and the WNBA has, let's say, 12, I think what the WNBA has to hope is that they put all of those teams and all of those players into one big bucket, and whatever the profitability is for the NBA plus the WNBA, put that together and then they split that amongst all of the players. That's the only option that they really have. And let's say there's 450 players in the NBA and there's 150 players. No, let's say there's 450 players in the NBA and there's 100 players in the WNBA. Those 550 players should have to split whatever, let's say 10% of the earnings of all those teams all put together. That's the only option that they really have, because something's got to offset the fact that they're losing $20 million every year. And if you add the NBA's profits into that, it obviously will offset it and then make it more reasonable to give yourself a pay raise. That's my only hope. That's the only thing they really should push for, if you ask me. But anyway, that's all that I got for you today. Let me know your thoughts on this situation. Is there something I'm missing as far as like what would make their argument more reasonable, asking for more money? Because I'm not seeing it. So thank you for watching the video. I appreciate your time. God bless. Peace.